Doing just a quick midday update today, 12:25 Eastern Standard Time. The markets are green today. And as I always say, it's important to see how the markets close. So the markets are up today. The Dow Jones is up 1.8, S&P up 1.57, NASDAQ up 1.3 at the moment. Off the news of retail sales coming in stronger, earnings are kind of across the board with the banks. Some are up, some are down. And we have big earnings coming out next week with a lot of the tech companies that are going to be releasing earnings and more retail oriented companies. So we'll have a real indication of what's going on. But obviously, with inflation like it is, prices are way up. So retail earnings obviously came in a little bit higher than expected off the back of the 9.1% inflation print. So the markets are kind of digesting that. We also have a, $1.2 trillion options expiry today. So a lot of rebalancing of portfolios going on with the options expiry. So it's going to be volatile. And really what the market is waiting for is all of the, forecasts in terms of what the Fed's going to do. And that's kind of all over the map, although markets are now pricing in an 80% chance that the Fed is going to raise rates by 100 basis points. So, why are the markets up if the Fed is going to raise rates 100 basis points? Because you still have a week and a half to go before we get there. So the markets have time to rebalance and to get ahead of that. So we're likely to see what we've been seeing. This is Bitcoin on the hourly, kind of ranging sideways here, 10% up, 10% down, just kind of working its way ahead of the next move, just like we saw last time over here, by the Fed. And if you look at it on the daily, it's even more clear. Price action is very similar. This is a little bit more spread out in the ranginess, mini version of this. A lot of people are calling it a bear flag, whatever. But the bottom line is, the technical indicators put the next leg down into that, lower range of about 13.5, 14,000, maybe 10 to 12,000 if it's really, really bad in terms of recessionary fears and the reaction of the Fed 100-point rate hike. Definitely going to retest that 17,000 level to see if that's going to hold. And that's the real big test for Bitcoin right there, is when the Fed raises 100 basis points and the market starts to unwind ahead of that in the next, probably the end of next week, going into the first part of the following week. The 26th, 27th is when the Fed meets. Wednesday, the 27th is when they're going to actually raise rates. And I do believe they're going to go ahead and raise 100 basis points because they're not meeting in August. So I think they want to get ahead of that for the next 2 months, because they know that inflation has potentially peaked, but also probably plateaued. So even though inflation may be peaking, and I think we might get another 9% read on the next print, because real estate inflation has not been priced in yet to that inflation print because it's lagging. So we haven't seen rent inflation, rent increases, housing cost increases, things like that are going to kind of wash out with energy costs, oil, things like that. And oil, there's a lot of speculation out there that oil is going to continue to rise. And it's this is the dollar here continuing its reach and its parabolic run. And then oil, there's a lot of speculation that oil is going to rise back up and get back up into that $100-$120 range again. So we'll just have to wait and see what the meeting with the Saudis looks like from Biden, if they're going to do anything about production. That's all over the news right here lately with, Biden meeting in Saudi Arabia to talk about oil production. So if they do not ramp up production, oil could jump back up again. And we could see another little spike in oil, which means another spike in gas prices. And that's really the other thing. Gas prices are down a little bit, but not enough to really offset rising rents, which are going to be in the next inflation print. We can see the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P kind of continuing its little range here, waiting for the Fed to come back and test these, pandemic high levels. And again, especially the S&P, this is all earnings-based pricing. So the question is, what do the earnings look like in order to adjust prices? So right now, everything's kind of consolidating, waiting out the Fed move, earnings, the Fed move, and those types of things. So, if earnings come out spotty over the next week and the Fed goes ahead and bumps 100 basis points, which they are probably likely to do, then you'll see the next leg down in markets, which, again, could be, let's see what that does on the S&P in terms of getting from where we're at today, but let's just look off the lows. That's about a 7%. So it's only about another 10% from where we are today to test those previous lows, 10, 12%, somewhere around there, depending on where we finish out the day. And anything can happen. As you see, a lot of times when the markets are way up in the mornings, they'll pull back a little bit in the afternoon, could be up by the end of the day, or could pull back at the end of the day, depending on news and anything else released on earnings. And of course, with Bitcoin, the things that we're watching are these levels, and really there's not much else to look at until we get some more earnings coming out and the move by the Fed, which is going to be the next market mover. Or if something else blows up in the crypto space, we have Celsius that filed bankruptcy. They're trying to work through that situation to see what's going on. Big hole there and all the contagion there. But so far, this is just leveling out, just like it's done the previous times, waiting for the Fed to make its move. If inflation has peaked and plateaued, so inflation, could definitely be peaking, but that doesn't mean it's coming down. So there's still issues to work through there. But if Bitcoin holds up right here, then that's a really, really good sign. Even if it drops to the next leg down, breaks the 17.5 level and comes down to that 12 or that 13.5 to 14,000 level, it could consolidate and hold there and put in a macro bottom there if this isn't it right now. So in terms of, whether you should buy or not saying you should buy, not saying you should sell. If you do buy here, then expect more downside into that, $10,000 to $12,000 range, and a consolidation where it could even drop lower than that, 3, 4, 5,000, bounce back up to 10, and kind of range that way for a while, like we've seen in the past when, the markets do that for about a year. So you got to be able to handle that and hold at those levels. We should definitely get back, even if it dropped down to those levels for a year or 18 months or 2 years, whatever happens, you would expect Bitcoin to get back to a minimum, back to this level again. And then we can start looking at next levels back and see if we can challenge, if Bitcoin can challenge the previous all-time high. So if you're going to buy here at this level, you have to be able to hold during, the worst case scenario, it drops down to 2, 3, 4,000 bucks, whatever it does, $5,000, and stays there for a while. It consolidates, and then eventually it will potentially bounce back to where it's at now, and then, possibly come back and challenge some of these other levels, just like it's always done in the past. But we didn't have an environment in the past like we have now, with recession, with war, inflation, where it's at, those types of things. So it could stay down lower a lot longer, potentially, where it consolidates. It could hold up right here. If there's enough capital out there and enough people buying at large scale levels, if a spot Bitcoin ETF gets approved, more capital flows into the space, it could potentially hold this level, bounce back down, check that 17.5, and then continue to kind of range. And this could be the bottom level range for a while, unless something really bad happens. So these are the things I'm looking at today. Right now, again, we're waiting on more earnings to come out. We're waiting on the Fed move to see what they actually do, how the markets react to that. And again, probably 10% down in traditional markets, maybe another 20, 30% down in Bitcoin, breaking that 17.5 level, checking that $12.5 to $14,000 level. That could be the major macro bottom in that area and put the base in. But there are a lot of analysts that think that this is the bottom range right now, and that inflation has peaked, which again, inflation could be peaking, but it will plateau for a while. It's not going to come down significantly anytime soon. So that's going to continue to weigh on the economy. So we'll just have to kind of wait things out, see how they go. We have a week and a half till the Fed meets. That is the next big test for Bitcoin. So these are the things I'm looking at. Watch the close. You'll see how the investors are feeling with the momentum into the close. And then we'll see what happens next week with more earnings.